Jane, I told Jane just to shorten it down to nothing, just to say I'm here, and that would have been enough. So just put the opposite, Jane, could you? Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm from Melbourne, but I've been coming to Adelaide for a long time, and I'd say since Macy's, the company I worked for many years ago, starting that agency here. And, oh, thanks. You want to do the speech? Oh yes, I forgot to. It's a laser thing. That's very right. Yes, I'll come back to that in a minute. Yes. I usually pinch my little 4-year-old grandson's laser beam, so I did it this way. So, right. Okay, Jane, thank you so much for that introduction. I've been coming here for many years, and I said yesterday, are you sure this is the classy end of town? And it is. I know that. So we're doing okay. The marketing awards, I'm pleased with that. You don't concentrate on the slide yet. I usually never put a slide up because after a while you look at the slide and after a while I'm looking at the slide and people are saying. So we'll lose the slide in a minute. You might do it now if you can. Just lose that slide for a sec. There you go, that's right. The marketing awards, I'm from the eastern states where I've mostly spent the time. And as you well know, we've had a pretty big campaign there that everyone was concentrating on over this last weekend. I think we almost had the marketing coup of the year in that a Labor Premier and government in New South Wales and Queensland almost elected for themselves a Liberal Prime Minister. And that would have made quite an award to give you today. And as I heard the Prime Minister say a famous line, which is, we've heard it before, the people have spoken. We're just not quite sure what they said. And so we look forward to all of that. This is the serious little bit of the day, where I'm delighted and happy to be able to talk about our changing media landscape. And you've got a celebration today in the city of awards, of good people doing good things, which is a little bit why we put that slide up there, because it's very interesting to know that there's two points I should make. The first thing is that this is the greatest change that has happened in the lifetime of just everybody in this room. The first one was when television was introduced. Those of you from Adelaide and elsewhere know 1960, I think, in the city onwards, 56 in Melbourne and elsewhere, that changed the entire world, the way we thought about everything, and that's been the marketing, media and in fact social landscape for that whole period of time. 2000 brought the next biggest change we've ever had, which was the arrival of the digital age, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And that's more than upon us, and you'll see a little bit of that. So your organisers asked if I just spend a minute as quickly as we could today, just underscoring the incredible world that we're in. That's the first thing. Absolute major, intense change that's taken place. I did very well with my career and my life because I was there at the beginning of the television age, and the people that were before me thought if we didn't put an ad in the newspaper it wouldn't work, and so I quickly figured out as a young person, 20, 21 or so, about television and radio, and moved on from there. We did the same thing in our business with the digital business. We started Image in 2000 when Google was 1 year old. When Rupert said the internet wouldn't work, and we started the business, now the biggest internet business in the country. And so we were able to work two big things that happened over that period of time. I'll retire at some time, I suppose, in the next 10 years because I'm buggered about what the third thing's going to be. But some of you clever people in this room here today might do all the things that I did. So Australia's in a very special place. And I think if we might go to that one slide, if you might, you see the reason for that is because right at this very minute people say, oh really? Australia has the highest per capita ad spend in the world. You say, surely it's not the US, Japan, UK, anywhere in Europe. No, it's that point. But this is the business that you're all in. It means that you're amongst the best advertising people in the world. The reason is because we're all just so competitive. And as an industry, we've got everyone wants to be here. All the European companies, all the American companies, our own Indigenous Australian businesses, all the Asian businesses are here. It's highly competitive in a very safe, secure, and of course we know economically very strong Australia. So let's go on from here about some of the things that are happening. Today I want to first take you through our thinking of what's going to happen. The main media in the next 3 years, focusing on how the roles of TV, newspapers and online in particular will change in terms of their share of ad spend and what that means to you. And then move on quickly, look at the key features of our media landscape in the period ahead, what it means for stakeholders, marketers, publishers, indeed governments, and the way in which this is going to change. Let's just go to, I think, one more slide I've got just to make a point. Thanks, young man. Here we go. I knew this would be difficult with 2 slides. There you go. And then I promise you this is the end of it. This is the point that really kills everybody. David Leckie says bullshit. I don't believe that. But what it means is this is newspapers. This is the world of Rupert Murdoch. The share was 37% in 2005, not too long ago, was it? This is free-to-air television, 7, 9, 10, etc. 31% of all the ad dollars, and this is what makes it run. And the others you can recognise, whether they be pay TV, magazines or radio, they're all down here. But what's this line here? That's the internet. In 2000, in fact, in 2000 it was naught. In 2005 it was 6.1% of all ad dollars. And our forecast, and it will happen, is that by 2013, within 3 years, it will have been probably the biggest share of all the ad dollars. And so that's at the back of everything that's going to happen. Right now we're about here. In fact, it's gone on from there. At this point here, we think it'll come out at about 19, maybe 20%. You say, is it really going to happen? Well, I can tell you that in the UK, that figure of the internet share is now at 30%. It's up here. In fact, it's overtaken them all. So that's something of a background. It doesn't mean, thanks, you can lose that one. It doesn't, not put that away. It doesn't mean that we give up on the world and that's it, and unless you're an internet rock star, life's all over. It's going to change, that's it. Marketers, publishers are going to have to be extremely nimble over the coming years to keep up with the changes and adapt to the new realities of advertising. Sometimes you say, I don't believe in things, they're just not going to happen. Believe me, this is happening. So what does the current media landscape look like? The old powerhouses, traditional media, particularly television, newspapers, magazines, have had to deal with the explosion of digital media over the last decade. This has happened more quickly than anything else. For those of you remember the beginning of VCRs, the introduction of mobile phones, colour television, anything in Australia, it will have got to 23% share of ad dollars within 13 years. Now, it took a quarter of a century, 25 years for that to happen with television. It just happened that quickly. It's one of the reasons our business has done well, and our competitors, of course, have done the same thing because they've moved quickly because of what this amazing proliferation is in media choices across all forms of entertainment, constantly evolving and driven, of course, by technology. In 2000, we had 65 TV channels to choose from. Now there are over 130, you know that. There were 222 radio stations. In fact, I remember when I started in the business with 114, and I can name every one of them. Not anymore, there are now 730. And there were 3 million online users in 2000, 3 million. Today there are 14.5 million people, all with access to the internet. The time we spend with media in total has increased slightly with all these channels, but there are so many hours in the day after all. I remember when I went to Stawell High School, just on the way back to Melbourne, along the Western Highway. The headmaster there told me something I've never forgotten. He said, we'll teach you at this school how to get a job. Your life will be divided up into 3 parts. 8 hours you'll be asleep, 8 hours you'll be working, it used to be the case, and 8 hours you'll have for the rest of your day. And this was a marvellous high school that, and we'll help you with those other 8 hours. And so the background that I had in just a regular old state high school enabled me to go on to be chairman of the National Gallery and the board of Opera Australia, with Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, all those sort of things. So it filled the other 8 hours. Why do I say that? Because still, the average person in Australia spends just on 8 hours a day with the media, the industry that you're involved with. 8 hours a day. It's a major part of it. Now, it is changing as to the makeup of that 8 hours, but nevertheless, it is enormous. In the last 4 years, our time spent watching TV has dropped 3.5%, with newspapers nearly 10%, and radio time has dropped 14%. In the same period of time, the time on the net has increased by more than 50%, and we now spend an average of nearly 12 hours a week online. And that's not just the young kids. My 90-year-old dad, he's on the net, he wants to know things, he doesn't want to die. I don't think he will. If he's going to die, I can tell you, it'll be through, because he's also got the Foxtel, it'll be through lack of sleep, or because we were brought up in sawmills, he'll cut his leg off, because he still uses a chainsaw to go and get the wood. I said, Dad, don't bother. He said, son, it's so expensive, don't worry, I'll do it. I said, I'll buy you some. No. And so that's the media business that we're in. We spend an enormous amount of time. Of course, the 2 biggest changes have been the rise of user-generated content, with the populations of social networking sites like Facebook, you know, now dwarfing many countries, and the increasing use by consumers of search. We're Google's biggest customer in this country, and search has just changed the entire world, transforming the way we shop, the way we think, and what we do. People say now, well, I'll just have to Google that. In fact, Jane, I think you Googled me to know that stuff, didn't you? Yeah, they're guilty. We all do it. So who is the new digital media consumer? The digital media consumer is us. We've taken to digital media with gusto. We're still hugely attached to traditional media. In fact, one of the key trends of digital media consumption is how much of it is produced through old media networks. So don't give up if you're a newspaper or television or you think that's where it is, because it still is. Television still commands the greatest part of our media time, over 21 hours a week, almost twice the amount of time we spend on the net. 4.7 million Australians visited the news website last week, but 13.2 million Australians still read a newspaper. Traditional media clearly still dominates our life, but the way we consume digital media has changed what we demand from the traditional media. The biggest differentiation of the new media is that it is on demand. It is always on, and you never have to wait for it. Digital consumers interact with their entertainment and with each other. However, our engagement with digital media is intense and short. Consider this. The average web session lasts 11 minutes and 30 seconds, 11 minutes. Compare that to our 3 hours of still a night of television. So I don't think it's absolutely taken over, it's just a different way we use it. So here's the really interesting thing. Much of the most popular content on new media is old media. Traditional media has been experimenting in the digital space for all of that 10 years. And that's fair enough too. I mean, this is just the greatest change that has ever happened. When television started, I promise you, the big media companies that got into it, they got into it as a protective measure. They said, well, we'll just make sure that if it's ever going to work, we'll be there. It wasn't as if they had a great insight to the fact that television would be what it was. And it was a little bit the same. We're only 10 years along with the digital media, and you know the battles with media and other companies have had. We've done well because, as I said, for whatever reasons in 2000, I thought this would occur, and it has. The content is hugely popular, but making revenue is the challenge. Most newspapers, for example, have found that the revenue they're losing offline is not being made up online. That can happen, it simply has to change. It's now time for that traditional media and advertisers to harness the power of the digital world and control the distribution of their valuable content. I spent some time last November in New York with Rupert, very gracious with his time, and you could see the changes taking place. Now, this is a guy who's 79 years old, and he gets it. He really did. He understood that along the time it would change, and they'd get there with it. And you could see it all playing out now. What do media companies have to do? Media companies need to understand that today's consumer wants to be their own content programmer as much as possible. In the past, we made it. We developed ads, we wrote the newspaper, we did the TV program. We said, you sit there, it'll all come to you. Not anymore. Now it's changing because people want to be in charge. I call it the red button, but they want to and they can. Something that Foxtel has been very quick to address, promoting their IQ devices, you know, on-demand services, everything that you could do with that. And this year has seen the major broadcasting networks also recognise the realities of digital demand, and they've done a great job. I think it was also a protective thing with them when they got the 3 extra channels, that they've now really made that work, and they're now starting to make it interactive where it's important, and it's given them another 10 years of their life, I expect. New media opportunities are popping up almost constantly. Our internet people, they tell me, they've got over 400,000 different choices that they could make of what to do with the internet. And that's not a bad thing, I'd have to say. It means that we have to be clear about what we do and how we control it all, but it does mean that it is a very, very different world to the one that we had. Mobile, particularly the iPhone and the iPad, any of you that have picked up on the iPad, you'll now know the incredible change that that's going to make to just everything. Could possibly be the way for media companies to really start driving up subscription revenue. Any of you, who's got an iPad in the room? Tell me. Oh, well done on you. Oh, yeah, you didn't brought it with you? Well, they tell me there's a 7-inch one coming out now. And the amazing thing about that, my 4-year-old grandson grabbed mine last Sunday and was into it in no time. There's a new world of people out there, scary. Mobile access liberates TV and print content from time and space. It comes to you wherever you are and whatever you want to do. I haven't had someone take one to lunch before, there you go. And the figures for mobile are modest so far. There's clearly a demand will only grow. In fact, I'll take that story back from Adelaide if you don't mind. And the other good thing about Adelaide is we always know that you get Melbourne weather 2 days before we get it. So what I do know this morning is I'm not going back to Melbourne for a couple of days because it ain't good out there. As platforms are proliferating, there are increasing the numbers of opportunities to reach smaller, highly engaged niche audiences. Now, I grew up in the world of mass media, mass products, mass markets, mass media. That's what it was. And that's where we're all pretty good at it. But that is, and with niche media, we used to talk about that, we didn't want to know about it. You know, if you had a Mercedes, you knew it was a Mercedes. Now there are 50 different types of Mercedes. That's the new world that it is. So these emerging platforms include an increasing number of pay TV channels, you know, well over 100. the new free TV digital channels and catch-up TV online. All of this is a massively changing world. The trade-off for advertisers, we are seeing a gradual decline, but not devastating, in the audiences of the traditional mass media to accommodate the change. The next challenge is how to market small audiences to advertisers, and those of you in the room here are now faced with all of that. Mass audiences are going to remain the ultimate in mass communication. It's very